Hello, you absolute legends. When it comes to cheating in speedruns, there are several popular methods that people normally employ. One is to directly modify the game they are playing in order to give themselves better luck. The most famous examples of this come out of Minecraft, where players use mods to change the RNG. We've also been seeing this recently in Monster Hunter, where players have been changing the behavior of bosses in order to get faster kills. Players can also modify the game to run in a different way to make things easier. This was a huge problem in Trackmania, where players were using Cheat Engine to play the game at half speed, making it easier to perform precise inputs. They would then play the record back at normal speed, and no one could tell the difference. Another method of cheating is to use external tools to play the game for you, and then pretend you're playing. This has been a huge problem in Geometry Dash, and there is always an arms race going on between cheaters and moderators. Moderators are always looking for ways to detect external tools, and cheaters are always looking for ways to make their fakes more believable. But one of the most ancient and by far the most popular techniques speedrunners use is the splice. Obviously, the longer a speedrun is, the more difficult it is to play through without making any mistakes. So to make things easier, cheaters will play through small sections until they do them well, and then stitch them together with video editing, so that it looks like it's one continuous run. With the rise of live streaming, splicing has become less of a problem in recent times, because it's just harder to fake something like this live. The players you really need to worry about are those that achieve records offline. And back before Twitch became popular, this was basically everyone. And when it comes to splicing, the game where it's been abused the most is almost certainly Super Mario 64. Historically, the most common way to detect splicing is by looking for anomalies in the audio track. However, quite a few of the ancient world records have terrible audio quality and makes this impossible. Without any really stupid continuity errors in the splicing process, it seems like it would be impossible to confirm if a splice had been done. But recently this has all changed, with a brand new, almost foolproof detection method being implemented, and it immediately exposed a fake world record from all the way back in 2011. This new method is great for two reasons. One, obviously it can expose faked runs, but also two, on the flip side, it can also confirm that world records aren't spliced, which is equally as important. And in today's video, we will take a quick look at what this new method was. I really hope you enjoy. Now legends, I'm excited because today we have a very special sponsor. Michael R. Miller is an amazing best-selling fantasy author who just released a third book in his series Songs of Chaos. If you read Eragon when you were younger, you will absolutely love Songs of Chaos. The story follows Holt Cook, a lowly servant boy who was never supposed to be destined for greatness. But in a twist of fate, he rescues the egg of a blind dragon that was supposed to be put to death, because dragons don't tolerate weakness. The pair form a bond, and together, the two outcasts must scramble to survive in a harsh world, fight off a horrifying undead threat, and uncover secrets that will change the world forever. Personally, I've really been enjoying the first book, Ascendant. The narration is incredible, voiced by the legendary Peter Kenny, who also narrated the Witcher series. Ascendant is almost 18 hours long and only costs 1 Audible credit, which is amazing value. All 3 books total almost 70 hours. Please click the link in the description and grab a copy of the first book, Ascendant. Or if you like reading, it's also available on Kindle or paperback. I can't recommend it enough. Now, before we begin, a big shout out to Drogi, who recently made a video discussing this new method, which is where I learned about it myself. So definitely go and check out his video if you want some more in-depth information, and be sure to subscribe to his channel. Back around 2010-2011, Super Mario 64 was dominated completely by Japanese runners, and one of them was known as Tsukishima. Even if you don't know anything about the history of the game, if you followed Super Mario 64 speedrunning before, you might have heard this name anyway. And that's because in the very first Bowser stage, there is something called the Tsukishima Cycle. Near the end of the stage are these rotating platforms, and you need them to be in a certain position in order to get the red coin. If you get there too late, you'll need to wait for the next cycle of rotation. If you go through the stage really fast, you can start to catch earlier and earlier cycles, and the fastest cycle that players currently use is called the Tsukishima Cycle. It's called this because Tsukishima caught this cycle all the way back in 2011, and it was insane for the time. Also in 2011, Tsukishima achieved the world record in the 16-star category, getting a time of 16 minutes and 11 seconds on the 10th of April. Unfortunately for him, it would only remain the record for a single day, when another Japanese legend, Shigeru, took the record back with a 1606. Tsukishima's 16-star record, as short-lived as it was still noteworthy though. For instance, it successfully implemented the pole warp in the second Bowser stage. Players did go for this previously, but at the time, no other players were able to do it successfully in a world record speedrun. This trick wouldn't be implemented in a world record again after this for another 4 years, when the runner Zaya did it to achieve a 15:35 in 2015. The other noteworthy thing about Tsukishima's run was that he had only been speedrunning the game for 1 year, which is a tiny amount compared to other top players. Aside from this, however, there was nothing obviously suspicious about the world record, but the context in which it was set is still important. Given that quite a few Japanese speedrunners during this era were ultimately exposed for cheating in one way or another, it makes sense to question every record from this time. If Tsukishima did splice this speedrun, the most obvious way to check would be to examine the audio track for any irregularities. The place players have always chosen to splice runs has been just after they enter or exit a level. There is a brief period where the screen is black and where there is no audio playing. This is by far the easiest place to hide a splice. But even though there is no game audio, there is still something being recorded. Capture devices will pick up a slight electrical hum called mains hum. So the audio track should never be truly silent. If a splice is done poorly, there will be complete gaps in this background noise, as was the case with a 2005 world record by the player Marius M. If the splice is done well, you need to look a bit closer. Given that the mains hum is normally a consistent 60 Hz, you can check to see if each tick is the same distance apart, and if not, that's an indication it has been spliced. Several world records were famously caught by detecting an inconsistent hum in 2014. Unfortunately, the audio quality on Tsukishima's world record is so poor that this method cannot be reliably used. The hum is still there, it's just a bit too quiet and gets lost in the background static. The run also doesn't have any continuity errors, like for instance the coin high score not matching up. Historically, these were the only methods to try and detect splicing, but thankfully in 2023, a brand new method was created. In 2016, SM64 scientist Panenkoek released a video outlining the mechanics around character blinking. The video covers blinking mechanics for a host of NPCs, but the most relevant information pertains to Mario. Mario will blink every 64 frames, which is just over every 2 seconds. This is extremely consistent. It's not affected at all by Mario's movement, and more importantly, the blinking timer remains constant even when entering and exiting levels. This means that if you see Mario blink before he enters a level, you should be able to count frames and predict exactly when he should blink again once inside. Of course, Mario's eyes aren't always visible, but that doesn't matter. If you miss one blinking cycle, or even several, you can just continue to count, and as long as the next visible blink is still on that 64 frame cycle, it's okay. It seems pretty obvious now, but it actually took 7 years for someone to finally realize that keeping track of Mario's blinking would be a good way to detect possible splices, and it would be the 120-star world record holder Ouija who would come to this realization in mid-2023. The easiest time to see when Mario blinks is when he grabs a star and after he exits a level, as his eyes are clearly visible for a long time. And given that all of the stars in a 16-star run are relatively short, it's very easy to calculate when Mario should blink. In practice, of course, there is some nuance to it. For example, you do need to remove some frames when the blink timer pauses briefly between level transitions, but it's still all very consistent and predictable. From here, SM64 historian Frosty Zarko would begin trawling through some of the ancient Japanese records, testing this theory. Upon examining the record from Shigeru achieved a day after Tsukishima's record, he found that Mario's blinking behaved exactly as the theory predicted. In fact, there was not a single instance found in the entire run where the blinking didn't behave as expected. However, when looking at Tsukishima's run, the blinking was all over the place. On at least 9 different stars, Mario blinked at completely unexpected times, indicating that there had to have been a splice. There is simply no other explanation. Several weeks after Tsukishima's record was determined to be spliced, footage of an even older run he did from 2010 resurfaced. This was a 16-star run of 1620 that was performed on emulator. Again, the blinks were inconsistent, confirming splices, but this time, the run even had continuity issues. In the stage Whomp's Fortress, when he collected the first star, he obtained 5 coins. So when he re-entered the stage, it showed he had a coin high score of 5. This makes sense. But after collecting the second star of the stage and entering again, it now showed a coin high score of 12. This doesn't make sense because on the second star, he didn't obtain any coins at all, so his coin high score should still have been 5. Errors like this can happen if you splice runs runs and don't check all of the details. It's apparent that Tsukishima had been cheating for over a year, and had begun cheating almost immediately after joining the community. This also puts massive doubt on the world record he achieved in the first Bowser stage, where he was honored by having the fastest cycle named after him. I'm curious to see if people now start calling it something else. And just as I was making this video, it was confirmed that even Tsukishima's single-level world records from back in 2011 were faked as well. The most obvious example is on his run of the third Bowser stage. After doing this long jump and taking fall damage, you can see Mario's health bar warp instantly to the top of the screen. This isn't what's supposed to happen. Looking at a legitimate run, you can see the health bar remains lower for a little while longer and then smoothly moves to the top of the screen. This even happens when you pause the game. So what happened is that Tsukishima paused the game after making the jump and taking damage. While the game was paused, the health bar moved to the top of the screen, so that when he unpaused, the health bar was already at the top. The reason he paused is so that he could create a save state to keep retrying from this point. Then later, he used video editing to remove the pause. I can create the same effect using this clip. When the game is paused, you can see the health bar move, but if I remove the pause, it will instantly warp. So it really seems like everything that Tsukishima did was a total lie. Tsukishima isn't the only player that's been caught with this new method. A couple of recent runs from even within the last year were caught as well, and when exposed, the person admitted they were spliced. These runs, however, weren't from the very top players, and they were also achieved offline. As I mentioned at the beginning of the video, players that live stream their attempts are far less likely to cheat, and essentially, all of the top SM64 runners play live. The simple fact is that the overwhelming majority of cheated speedruns are from people who play in secret and then upload their runs to YouTube. This is why so many ancient runs end up getting exposed. Back in the day, hardly anyone streamed, and cheating really was a lot more common, which just goes to show how important streaming is and how important good proof standards are. Again, a big thanks to Drogi for his video on the subject. Go and subscribe to his channel, and a big thanks to Frosty Zarko for doing an amazing job documenting the history of Super Mario 64. Thank you so much for watching, you legends. I hope you're having a fantastic day, and I will see you in the next video.